You're listening to What to Listen To, the podcast that answers the question you didn't even know you were asking. From fascinating deep dives to thought-provoking trends, we've got your ears covered, so sit back, plug in, and let's explore what's worth your time today.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're going to be taking a deep dive into Black Wall Streetopoly.
Oh, very cool.
And we're really excited about this one because this is a game that kind of hits a lot of different points. You know, it's about history, it's about community, it's about economic empowerment.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting how they're trying to use a game to kind of teach about this tragic event and the whole concept of Black Wall Street.
Yeah, this episode is actually sponsored by Black Wall Streetopoly itself, created by Scott Manthey and Ariel Tourner of SMAT Designs. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, getting ready for this deep dive, I was doing a lot of research on the game itself, and I came across this really fascinating fact about Monopoly. Did you know that the origins of Monopoly, like game we all know and love or love to hate,
right,
actually kind of had its roots in critiquing capitalism?
Really?
I know.
Crazy.
Right? I did not know that.
Yeah, so the original version of Monopoly was called the Landlord's Game.
And it was created in 1903 by a woman named Lizzie Magie. Mm-hmm. And she was, she was a real advocate for economic justice. And she wanted to create a game that would expose the problems with monopolies and advocate for a fairer system.
It's amazing how a game can be used for that kind of social commentary.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's like a sneaky way to get people thinking about these things.
Yeah, totally.
But then, of course, fast forward a few decades and Parker Brothers picks up the game.
All right.
And they kind of strip away all those anti-capitalist messages.
Oh, wow.
And turn it into the kind of cutthroat game that we know today.
The one we love to hate.
Yeah, exactly.
Where you're just trying to bankrupt everybody.
So it's this weird kind of historical irony.
Totally.
That this game that was meant to critique capitalism becomes the symbol of it.
It's a really interesting parallel to what happened with Black Wall Street, too, where you had this thriving Black community that was achieving economic success, and then it was just violently destroyed.
It's almost like history repeating itself in a way.
Right.
Like this idea of building something up only to have it torn down by, greed and violence.
Yeah. And the fact that the Tulsa Race Massacre was largely ignored for so long.
It's crazy how something like that could be swept under the rug for so long.
Right. And I think that's part of what Black Wall Streetopoly is trying to do, is to bring that story to light and make sure that it's not forgotten.
Yeah. And to teach people about it in a way that's engaging and accessible.
Right. Because not everyone's going to sit down and read a history book.
Exactly.
But a game is something that people can connect with and have fun with while they're learning.
Yeah, I think that's a really brilliant approach.
Me too.
So the Justice Department actually released a really in-depth report on the Tulsa Race Massacre just a couple of years ago.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's pretty harrowing reading.
I bet.
But it really lays out the scale of the attack. They estimate that as many as 10,000 white people were involved in the mob.
10,000.
That's insane.
That's a huge number.
And they systematically destroyed homes, businesses, churches, everything.
Oh my gosh.
And the city just completely failed to provide any kind of aid or protection to the Black community.
It's just unbelievable that something like that could happen in America.
I know. It's hard to fathom that this happened, less than 100 years ago.
Right. And it wasn't that long ago that people started really talking about it and acknowledging it.
And there are still people today who deny that it even happened.
It's just so important to keep telling these stories and making sure that the truth gets out there.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the things that you learned about the massacre from the Justice Department report?
Well, one thing that really stuck with me was the level of organization and premeditation that went into the attack.
Really?
It wasn't just a spontaneous outburst of violence, it was planned.
Wow.
They had guns, they had explosives, they even had airplanes that were firing down on Greenwood.
Planes.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah. And then afterwards, they actually turned photographs of the massacre into postcards.
What?
Yeah, and they would write racist messages on them and send them all over the country.
Oh my gosh, that's horrible.
It's just sickening.
It's like they were proud of what they did.
Yeah, it's really disturbing.
It's hard to even imagine the kind of hate and dehumanization that would drive someone to do something like that.
Right. It's just beyond comprehension.
Yeah, but I think it's important to remember that these were real people with real lives and families.
Absolutely.
And their stories deserve to be heard.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that Black Wall Streetopoly does so well is it brings those stories to life.
Right.
Like you're not just reading about facts and figures. You're actually getting to know the people who lived in Greenwood.
And I think that's what makes it so powerful.
Yeah, like one of the survivors, Dolores Mandy, she talks about how the smoke from the fires was so thick that it blocked out the sun.
Oh, God.
And she could hear bullets whizzing past her head.
Oh, my goodness.
And she had no idea if her family was safe.
That's terrifying.
It's just heartbreaking to think about what those people went through.
And yet they were still able to rebuild.
I know, it's incredible.
Like, they didn't let this tragedy define them.
Yeah, they showed so much strength and resilience.
It's really inspiring.
So how do you think Black Wall Streetopoly approaches this idea of resilience?
Well, I think one of the key things is that it focuses on community building.
Yeah.
Like, instead of just trying to win by yourself, you're encouraged to work together and help each other succeed.
So it's more about collaboration than competition.
Exactly. And I think that's a really important message, especially in today's world where it's so easy to get caught up in individual success and forget about the importance of community.
Yeah, I think that's a really valuable lesson that the game teaches.
Me too. And it's a lesson that I think we can all learn from.
So how does Black Wall Streetopoly actually differ from Monopoly in terms of gameplay?
Well, one of the biggest differences is that in Black Wall Streetopoly, you don't actually buy properties.
Oh, interesting.
Instead, you invest in businesses and community projects.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and the goal is to work together to create a thriving community.
So it's not about bankrupting your opponents.
No, it's about working together to build something positive.
That's a really refreshing change in pace.
Right.
And it really reflects the spirit of Black Wall Street, where people were all about supporting each other and lifting each other up.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the things that makes Black Wall Streetopoly so special.
Yeah, it's not just a game, it's a statement.
It's a way to honor the legacy of Black Wall Street and to keep that spirit alive.
And it's a way to start a conversation about race and economic justice.
Yeah, I think it's a really powerful tool for education and social change.
So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Do you think that games can be an effective way to teach people about history and social issues?
I definitely think so. I think games have a unique ability to engage people on a different level than, say, reading a textbook or watching a documentary.
Yeah, like it's more interactive.
Right. And it's more fun. And when you're having fun, you're more likely to learn and retain information.
So it's like sneaky learning.
Exactly.
I like it.
And I think Black Wall Streetopoly is a great example of how a game can be used to teach people about a really important but often overlooked part of history.
Yeah. I think it's a brilliant idea.
Me too.
So we've talked a lot about the Tulsa Race Massacre and the history of Black Wall Street, but I'm curious to learn more about the game itself. Like, what are some of the specific mechanics and how do they tie into the historical narrative?
Yeah, let's dive into that.
Okay, so one of the things I noticed is that the game tokens are all based on real businesses that existed in Greenwood.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Like there's a train engine, an oil derrick, and even a Dreamland Theater ticket.
So they're not just generic pieces like in Monopoly.
They're all connected to the history of Black Wall Street.
And I think that's a really clever way to tie the game into the real world.
Yeah, it makes it feel more immersive.
Right. And it helps to bring the history to life.
And I think it also sends a message about the entrepreneurial spirit of the Black community in Greenwood.
Absolutely.
Like these people were innovators and creators.
They built something amazing from nothing.
And they did it in the face of incredible adversity.
Right. And I think that's a really important message for people to learn, especially young people.
Yeah, like anything is possible if you set your mind to it.
And if you have the support of your community.
Exactly.
So tell me more about how the game actually works.
Okay. So instead of buying properties, you invest in businesses.
Okay.
And you can choose to invest in businesses that are owned by other players, or you can start your own business.
Interesting. So it encourages collaboration.
Yeah. And there are also community projects that you can invest in which benefit everyone.
So it's not just about individual gain.
No, it's about working together to create a thriving community.
And I think that's a really powerful message.
Yeah, it's like a different model of success.
Right. It's not just about accumulating wealth for yourself. It's about creating something that benefits everyone.
And it's about celebrating the accomplishments of the Black community.
Absolutely.
So I'm really curious to hear what you think about this idea of using games to teach about history and social issues.
I think it's a really great idea. I think games are a really powerful tool for learning. And they can be a lot more engaging than traditional methods like lectures or textbooks.
Especially for younger generations.
Right. They're used to learning through games and technology.
Yeah, and I think Black Wall Streetopoly is a great example of how a game can be both entertaining and educational.
Definitely.
And it's a great way to start a conversation about some really important issues.
Yeah, it's a conversation starter.
And I think we need more conversation starters like this.
We too.
So as we wrap up this first part of our deep dive into Black Wall Streetopoly, I want to leave our listeners with this thought. What are some other ways that we can use games to teach about history and social justice?
That's a great question, and I think there are a lot of possibilities. I think we can create games about all sorts of topics, from civil rights to climate change to immigration.
Yeah, and we can use games to teach people of all ages.
Absolutely.
So let's get creative and let's use games to make a difference.
I'm into Perseity.
Me too.
And another thing that makes Black Wall Streetopoly stand out is how it really emphasizes collaboration instead of that cutthroat competition you see in Monopoly.
Right. Like you're not trying to bankrupt everybody.
Exactly. You're actually encouraged to work together and pool resources and help each other out.
Yeah, that's such a cool concept. Like instead of trying to hoard all the wealth for yourself, you're actually trying to create a community where everyone can thrive.
Exactly. And I think that's much more in line with the spirit of Black Wall Street, where people were really looking out for each other and supporting each other's businesses.
It's funny because even in Monopoly, a lot of people will play with that house rule where all the money from taxes and fines goes in the middle.
Well, yeah.
And then whoever lands on free parking gets it all.
I've played with that rule too.
It's like we're so conditioned to think about individual gain, even when we're playing a game that's supposed to be about, the evils of capitalism.
It's like this weird irony, right?
Totally.
Like we're trying to expose the flaws of the system while simultaneously rewarding the very behavior that the system encourages.
It's like we can't escape it.
And that's why I think Black Wall Streetopoly is so refreshing. It's like it's offering a different model, a different way of thinking about success.
Yeah, it's like saying, hey, there's another way to play the game.
Right. And it's a way that's more aligned with our values, like community and cooperation and shared prosperity.
And it's a way that honors the legacy of Black Wall Street.
Absolutely.
So Scott Manthey and Ariel Tourner, the creators of the game, have talked about how they really want to use Black Wall Streetopoly as a tool for education.
Yeah.
Like they want to not only teach people about the Tulsa Race Massacre, but also spark conversations about economic equity and social justice.
It's using a game to make a statement.
Right. And I think it's a really brilliant approach because it's not just preaching at people. It's getting them to think about these issues in a fun and engaging way.
And it's interactive, right?
Exactly. Like you're not just passively absorbing information. You're actually participating in a simulation of sorts.
Yeah, and that can be really powerful. It can help people to develop empathy and understanding in a way that just reading a book or watching a movie can't.
I think it could be a really valuable tool for educators, in schools or even in corporate settings.
Oh, totally.
It could help people to understand the systemic factors that contribute to inequality.
And it could help people to develop solutions. By working together in the game, they can start to see how collaboration can lead to positive change in the real world.
I love that idea, using a game to model positive social change.
It's like a microcosm of society. And it shows you that even small actions can have a ripple effect.
Yeah. And it gives you hope that things can actually change.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of these problems, racism and poverty and inequality.
Certainly. What can I possibly do to make a difference?
Right. But when you play a game like Black Wall Streetopoly, it shows you that even small acts of collaboration and community building can have a real impact.
And it reminds you that you're not alone in this fight.
That's so important, to feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself.
And that together we can actually make a difference.
So how do you think Black Wall Streetopoly connects to the current movement for racial justice?
Well, I think it's really timely, because there's so much more awareness now about the need to support Black-owned businesses and invest in Black communities.
Right, there's this whole movement to buy Black.
Yeah, and I think Black Wall Streetopoly really taps into that energy.
It's it's giving people a tangible way to support those efforts.
Yeah, you're not just talking about it, you're actually doing it.
Right. And it's showing you that economic empowerment is a key part of racial justice. It's you can't have one without the other.
Exactly.
So what do you think are some of the biggest takeaways from Black Wall Streetopoly? Like, what do you hope people will learn from playing this game?
Well, I think one of the biggest takeaways is that our current economic system is not the only way.
Right. Like, it's not inevitable.
Exactly. Like, there are other models that are more just and more equitable.
And those models are based on collaboration and community building.
Right. Not on competition and greed.
And I think that's a really important message for people here, especially young people.
Yeah, because they're the ones who are going to be inheriting this world.
And they need to know that there's a different way.
And that they have the power to create that different way.
So it's not just a game, it's a call to action.
It's a revolution.
A playful revolution.
I like that.
So what are some things that people can do in their own lives to, like, support Black communities and promote economic justice?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to just be aware of where you're spending your money.
Right, like supporting Black-owned businesses. Exactly. And there are a lot of resources out there now to help you find those businesses.
Yeah, like there's websites and apps and even just like asking around in your community.
Right. And it doesn't have to be a big thing, you know? Like, even just making a conscious effort to buy from a Black-owned business once a week can make a difference.
Yeah, and it's not just about spending money. You can also volunteer your time or donate to organizations that are working to promote economic justice.
Right. And you can also just talk to people about these issues, you know, like raise awareness and start conversations.
Yeah, because sometimes just having those conversations can be really powerful.
It can help to break down stereotypes and challenge people's assumptions.
And it can help to build bridges of understanding and empathy.
So I think it's important to remember that, like, we all have a role to play in creating a more just and equitable world.
Right. It's not just up to like activists or politicians.
It's up to all of us.
And it starts with like small actions in our everyday lives.
Like supporting Black-owned businesses or talking to our friends and family about these issues.
And playing games like Black Wall Streetopoly.
Exactly.
So I think it's really inspiring to see how Scott and Ariel have used their creativity and their passion to create a game that's not only fun, but also educational and thought-provoking.
Yeah, it's a really great example of how games can be used for good.
So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Do you think that games can be a more effective way to teach people about history and social issues than traditional methods like documentaries or textbooks?
I think they have the potential to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think games are more engaging. You know, like they're interactive and they're fun.
And they can be really immersive.
Right. Like you're not just like passively consuming information. You're actually like experiencing it.
Yeah. And I think that can make the lessons more impactful and memorable.
Absolutely. And I think Black Wall Streetopoly is a great example of that.
Yeah. Like you're not just reading about the Tulsa Race Massacre. You're actually like playing through it in a way.
Right. And that can really help you to understand the complexities of the event and the impact that it had on the community.
And it can help you to connect with the stories of the people who lived through it.
Exactly.
So I think games have a really unique ability to like bridge the gap between the past and the present.
Right. And to make history feel relevant to our lives today.
Yeah, and to inspire us to take action.
So I think it's really exciting to see more and more games being created that are focused on social impact.
Me too.
And I think Black Wall Streetopoly is a really great example of what's possible.
So as we continue our deep dive into Black Wall Streetopoly, I want to explore the lasting legacy of the Greenwood community and the efforts that are being made to ensure that this tragic chapter in American history is never forgotten. You know, it's incredible to think about how they were able to rebuild after something so horrific.
Yeah, it's really a testament to like their resilience and their determination. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's tragic that this event was basically erased from history for so long.
Yeah, I mean, it was intentionally suppressed. You know, people didn't want to talk about it.
And, you know, the Justice Department report that we keep mentioning actually points out that even though, you know, obviously we can't prosecute anyone for this crime after all these years.
Right.
They said that even back in 1921, there were actually civil rights laws that could have offered avenues for justice.
It's amazing to think that, like, even back then, there were laws in place that could have protected the community.
Yeah, but those laws weren't enforced.
And that's the problem. You know, like, it's not enough to just have laws on the books. You have to actually enforce them.
And you have to have a system that's actually willing to protect the rights of all citizens.
Exactly.
So it makes you think about, like, how far we've come in terms of legal protections, but also how much work still needs to be done.
Totally. Like, we can't just rest on our laurels, you know? Like, we have to keep fighting for justice.
And we have to keep learning from the past.
Yeah, like we
Yeah.
can't let these tragedies be forgotten.
And one of the things that Dr. Carlos Hill, a historian who specializes in the Tulsa Race Massacre, really emphasizes is the importance of centering the voices of the victims and survivors.
Yeah, their stories are the ones that need to be heard.
And, he talks about how we need to focus on their experiences, their resilience, and their determination to rebuild.
And that's what Black Wall Streetopoly does so well,
Yeah, brings those stories to life.
It's not just about the facts and figures, it's about the human impact of this tragedy.
And it's about the enduring legacy of Black Wall Street.
So I think it's really important for people to understand that history isn't just something that happened in the past,
Right. It's still shaping our world today.
Like the effects of the Tulsa Race Massacre are still being felt by the Black community in Tulsa.
And all across the country.
And it's up to us to make sure that those effects aren't forgotten.
And that we learn from the past so that we can create a better future.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Black Wall Streetopoly, I want to leave our listeners with a few thoughts. First of all, I think it's really important to support the creators of this game.
Absolutely.
They've done an amazing job of bringing this story to light and creating a tool that can be used for education and social change.
And they're a small Black-owned business.
So by supporting them, you're also supporting the Black community.
And you're investing in a more just and equitable future.
Second of all, I think it's important to continue to learn about the Tulsa Race Massacre and the history of Black Wall Street.
Yeah, there are so many resources out there now, books, articles, documentaries.
And you can even visit the Greenwood Cultural Center in Tulsa.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And finally, I think it's important to take action.
Yeah, like what can we do in our own lives to make a difference?
Well, like we talked about earlier, you can support Black-owned businesses. You can volunteer your time.
Yep.
You can donate to organizations that are working to promote racial justice.
And you can have those tough conversations with your friends and family.
Yeah, like don't be afraid to speak up and challenge racism and injustice when you see it.
Because silence is complicity.
And we all have a responsibility to do our part.
So I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Black Wall Streetopoly.
It's been a pleasure.
And I want to thank Scott Manthey and Ariel Tourner for creating this amazing game.
Yeah, they're true visionaries.
And I want to encourage all of our listeners to check out the game and to learn more about the Tulsa Race Massacre and the history of Black Wall Street.
It's a story that deserves to be told.
And it's a story that can teach us a lot about ourselves and about our country.
So let's keep the conversation going.
And let's keep working towards a more just and equitable world.
Thanks for listening.
Until next time.
Until next time, don't just hear the world, listen to it.